But, it's that we're afraid of just how powerful we may be. Sometimes we're afraid to step into our power because we know that it can change everything. And most people are not comfortable with change, So the other thing I just want to mention is, for me, somebody asked me one day, what's the opposite of love? And I said, oh, that's easy. It's fear. It's not hate. Because when you really stop and think about it, fear breeds the hate. Fear is the reason for the bullying, for the put downs, for all of pretty much everything that's negative, you can attribute it back to fear.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Project Positive Change Soul Series. I'm here with my co-host, Michelle Jeffrey, and we have our beautiful guest today, Angela Britton. Hello, Angela.
Hi there. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. We're so happy you're here, and our audience as well. So Project Positive Change Soul Series brings together visionaries, change agents, and thought leaders who are ready to shine the light of awareness on topics that will create a wave of positive change in the world. A collection of teachings will be shared, sparking conversations that matter, which is at the heart of our Soul Series. And Michelle is going to introduce our guest, Angela Britton. Take it away, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. I am super excited to bring to you, to have this opportunity to meet with Angela Britton and just shine a light on a woman that I have had the pleasure of meeting. She's also been such a balcony person for all of us in Project Positive Change. She's a visionary. She jumped in with both feet, not even knowing what's she going to do with this. What is this all about? But Angela just knows that she walks her talk. She lives her life, and she lives it well. She not only coaches people to get all that they can from their life and live their dreams, but from where I sit, I see Angela living her own dreams as well. She's in constant pursuit of more of what will take her on her personal journey. She holds a master's degree in education. She's a certified dream builder coach and an infinite possibilities trainer. That's where I was able to meet you, was down in San Diego. She is also a published author of her recent book, You Can't Love Him into Loving You. Oh, I can't wait to go into that. It's so super exciting. Angela has presented workshops in several countries, and the core message is living the life of your dreams and overcoming fear. She's also been featured in the 1000 Ripple Project and Inner Wisdom Project. Today, she's going to be sharing with us. Our talk is really focusing on owning your power, your life, your choice, and it's all inside of you, which is kind of all wrapped up in a nice, pretty bow of Angela's philosophy is it's your life, live it well. And today we're all going to have an opportunity to glean some of her nuggets of wisdom and start applying that to our own lives. I'd love to welcome Angela and welcome to our call today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So Angela, before we get into the body of your talk and before you share some of these wisdom nuggets that we're talking about, I'm super curious about, because I know that we often teach what we most need to learn. So I'm really curious about if there was ever a time in your life that you recognize the tables were a little bit more turned. Now you're teaching it, and now you're helping others step into their full life of dreams. But was there a time in your life that you were experiencing more fear than love?
That's a good question, and absolutely it is exactly why I now try to share this information with other people, women in particular, I think. I was raised by a very strong father who didn't have any sons. I was it. So he taught me to be very strong, very powerful, that I could do anything that I ever set my mind to. God bless my father for that. But then as I got older and my parents passed away, I found myself getting into relationships with men and trying to mold myself into whatever it was that I thought they wanted, and totally giving up all of my power. And that's part of what led to this book. And so afterwards, I finally realized, I mean, people that know me now can't imagine that I ever was in the type of situations that I allowed myself to be into. But so I've reclaimed my power. Several years ago, I reclaimed my power. It took me a long time to do that, though. It's a journey. But I wish I'd had somebody like me, or I'd known some of the things that I know now when I was in my situation. I wouldn't have stayed as long as I did. But I didn't know. I didn't know any better. So there I was, trapped.
I love how that you found the gift, though, right at the very beginning when you explained your father taught you all of this, but at the same time he gave you that gift of believing in yourself, and that's like the higher perspective, right? That's where the wisdom comes from, and what makes you capable of coaching other people, other women and other people, is that in your coaching that you do, you are able to facilitate transformation for your clients because you have high level perspective. That's that high level comes from seeing that you've already been there. So your hope for others.
Yes, I've definitely gone through, as they call it, the dark night of the soul. I've had that journey, and I'm glad I survived that journey through there, because there were some moments where I wasn't sure that I would, but I did. And you always come out stronger on the other side. It's kind of like being forged by fire. It's what makes swords and steel stronger, is when they're tempered in the fire. And I definitely was in the fire for I was in it for 14 years, but I was so naive and so, trapped in it. I didn't even realize that I was in such a bad relationship until year 3. So I like to say I was in it for about 11 years, although the marriage lasted for 14. But it was, I just gave all of my power away, and in order not to face the reality that I was living in, I stayed so busy. I was taking 21 hours every semester at college. I was the yearbook editor for my son's school. I was the yearbook editor for my college, and I had a part-time job on the side. And I was the room mother for my son's school as well. So that left very little time for me to think about my personal situation. And I know I planned it that way,
Yeah, that makes sense that was your coping strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, when I look at your philosophy of it's your life, live it well, I can see how that would shine through, coming from a place of just because you're busy didn't mean you're actually living it well, doesn't actually mean you're pursuing your dreams. Even though, let's say I'm a mom as well, I know that part of living my dreams was to raise children. I can really relate to a lot of what you're saying. And it's that keeping busy didn't necessarily mean I was in hot pursuit of my dreams.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about owning your power. So share with us a little bit about, now we know how important that was to you. So what is your message about owning your power?
I think that we need to stop and realize, and we've been hearing this for years, nobody else can make you happy. Nobody else can make you mad. You get mad because you've given away your power to that person. You know, you're the only person responsible for your happiness. Until you're happy, you can't really share that. Until you love yourself, you can't really be in love with somebody else and share that true love. And you know, after 3 years of being in a bad marriage, I no longer did I love myself. I didn't even like myself. So part of the emotional abuse that was being heaped on me probably felt to me that maybe I deserved some of that, you know, and it just kept snowballing and snowballing and getting worse and worse and worse. I do have to say there was never any physical abuse, but the emotional abuse was beyond what you could possibly imagine. So I got to where I would leave on the weekends. I was living in Louisiana, and on the weekends I would drive over to Houston. It's like a 2-hour drive because I still had a lot of friends in Houston. And I would come over to Houston for birthday parties, for baby showers, you know, that sort of thing. And it was just a little relief to get out from under the oppressive, you know, marriage that I was in. So he always acted like he hated for me to go out of town, I guess because he didn't have anybody to verbally abuse while I was gone. But then one day, this is just a little example of his cruelty. One day I had already packed my car before he got home. And so when he got home, I said, hey, I've got to go over to Houston for a birthday party this weekend. And so he went to the back door and he kind of blocked the doorway. And he said, you know, he said, I used to really hate it when you would go to Houston for the weekends, but I've decided now I like that. I think it's a good thing. And so I was like, oh, well, that's wonderful. And then he said, well, don't you want to know why? And I was like, oh gosh. I didn't really want to ask, but I told him, I said, okay, I'll play your game. Why? This was probably about year 12. So I kind of learned, you know. So I said, okay, tell me, why do you like for me to go to Houston now? And he got this weird little smirk on his face and he said, well, because when you go over there, I just keep hoping and praying that I'll get that one phone call. And before I could stop myself, I said, what phone call? Because I'm thinking in my mind that he's hoping that I'm going to call him and say, I'm not coming back or something along those lines. But oh no. He said, you know, the phone call from the state troopers that tell me that you're dead in a fiery car crash. And I said, oh, fiery car crash, nice touch. And so then he moved away from the door and I opened the door. And when I stepped out, I turned back around and I said, well, hope springs eternal, and just slammed the door. I mean, it was just insane. It's crazy.
And
Wow.
and so often it just becomes normalized.
Exactly.
Right?
After
You don't even know that this is unusual behavior, that I'm so used to it, I'm so strong, I can take it. That's often what happens with strong women such as yourself. I know that happened to me, was I could take your bullshit, bring it, because there's nothing you can say.
Right. And that's why I was like, oh, well, you know, hope springs eternal, you know, try to hand it back to him. But, you know, our society today, the sitcoms on TV or a lot of the TV programs, they're geared towards sarcasm. They're not really funny. They're just put downs on other people. And it really became noticeable to me when I was living in South Africa, because the little TV shows there are all really, I mean, they're kind of slapstick, but they're actually funny stuff. It's not somebody being cruel to somebody else. And the people there they reminded me when my parents were alive and younger. You know, everybody wants to help everybody else and they compliment each other and they're kind. They're kind to each other. Our society has kind of moved away from kindness. And that's what I think Project Positive Change is so good for, is for heart-centered people like ourselves to start spreading that message, you know, around the world and more often. It takes nothing to be kind. My mother raised me to say that if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And I've tried to adhere to that, but there was a period of my life to where that went totally out the window.
And so, if I hear you correctly, owning your power was to kind of just become accountable and responsible for your happiness, even if that meant you had to end a relationship that you had become used to. For some people, it might be just choosing to remove themselves from any situation where they're feeling that they don't have a choice in things.
Mm-hmm. You always have a choice. You have a choice not to make the choice. And that's what a lot of people choose. But it's still a choice. I've had to remove, friends from my life because I realized that they didn't really know who I was at my core, or they would just be terribly unkind to me and to other people around them. And I just decided I don't need that negativity in my life anymore. I want my life to be, I choose what comes into my life and what I send out to the world. It's my choice. It's my power. I claim it. I have the power to choose that. And I think we all do. And if you're unhappy in your life, we always say that not only do you have the ability to change your circumstances and to change your life, but you actually have the responsibility to do that. You have the responsibility to live a happy life because your happiness spreads out to everybody else.
Yes. Yes, it sure does. It sure does, Angela. What I'm thinking as I'm listening to your story, and I really honor you for having the courage to walk away from that long-term relationship that you had. And I see how you reclaimed your power. And I would love for you to share with our audience, like from that moment where you did reclaim your power to where you are now, what did that open up for you? How did you get from walking away from that marriage and then to doing what you're doing right now?
Well, first, let me say that I did not walk away from the marriage. I ran away from the marriage. And we had a child at the time, and he was 11 years old. My son was 11 years old. And I had stayed in the marriage for the sake of my child, as a lot of women do. Excuse me. But one day, my son and I were sitting on the sofa watching TV, and it was an old black and white movie. And the husband came up behind the wife and turned her around and just really sweetly kissed her on the lips. And my son sitting beside me was like, "What are they doing?" And I looked at him and I said, "What?" I was like, I didn't know what he was asking. And he said, "What are they doing?" And I realized in that moment, he had never seen his dad and myself kiss or have any type of affection to each other. And I realized in that moment that I had stayed for the sake of my child, and now I needed to leave for the sake of my child. But it was hard, and I didn't really know how I was going to do it, because in our circle of friends, another couple that was in our circle had gotten a divorce, and the wife was from Atlanta, and she was leaving to go back to Atlanta, and she was taking their 3-year-old son. And so she stopped by. We were all having a big dinner party with 5 different couples there. And so she came by, and when she left, we were all back at the table, and everybody's kind of solemn. And my husband speaks up and says, "I can tell you this right now." He's a Louisiana boy. He said, "I can tell you this right now. No wife of mine would ever take a child of mine away from me." He said, "Because I know enough back bayous where the alligators are, and they'd never find her body." So fast forward 12, 13 years down the line, I'm remembering this a little bit. So I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to extricate myself from this marriage? How am I going to get out of here? Well, he would go up to the lake house. His dad had a lake house, and they would all go up there on the weekends. I I didn't go because I enjoyed the peace and quiet. So but he would take our son up there. So he left one weekend, and about an hour and a half later, I heard a car in the garage, and it was him. And when he stepped in the house, our son wasn't with him. And I asked him, I said, "Where's Josh?" And he said, "Well, he went on up to the camp with my mom and dad. I'm going to go up later, but I have something to do first." Okay, he was always to himself and not sharing a lot. So he had a little workshop at the back of the house, and I hear the back door open and I hear it close, and out of the corner of my eye, I'm standing at the kitchen sink. Out of the corner of my eye, I see him walk down the hallway, and he's carrying something. And I'm going, "What?" So I kind of stepped around the corner, and he had a rifle in his hand, into the living room. And I said, "What are you doing with a rifle in the living room?" I'm so clueless. And he says, "Oh, I've got a TV show to watch, but I got to clean this. I told Dad I'd bring it up to the camp." So I don't think anything else about it. So I'm back at the sink washing dishes, and about 15 minutes later, he says, "Hey, come see." And so I stepped into the doorway between the kitchen and the living room, and he was sitting on the coffee table with the gun pointed at my head. And I don't know if you guys ever saw this poster of a little mouse, and this big eagle is swooping down to get the mouse, and the little mouse is flipping flipping the eagle off. And something came over me in that second, and I felt like that little mouse, and I kept my eyes locked on his, and I don't think my knees were visibly shaking, but inside I was like, doing this little number. But on the outside, I was just stoic. And I remember I looked him straight in the eyes and I said, "Really?" I said, "What is your son going to think about this?" And he didn't answer, and he didn't drop the gun. And I just slowly took 2, 3 steps back until I was back in the kitchen. And then I stepped out of the doorway, turned around, ran to the back door. My car keys were hanging there. I grabbed my car keys. My purse was in the back of the house, but I didn't care. I jumped in my car and drove over to a friend's house. So I spent the night with her. I told her what had happened. And so she went with me the next day over to my house, and he wasn't there. He was gone. And so we loaded up my car with whatever would fit in it as far as my clothes, my shoes. I didn't even get everything that I owned, and I left, and that was it. So I definitely ran away. So I started from that point literally at ground zero again with just almost nothing. So that was definitely the end of that marriage and the beginning of my new wonderful life.
So almost nothing, and at the same time, you had everything. You had
everything.
Ground zero, a blank slate,
Yes.
an opportunity to create.
Exactly. And that's the way I felt about it too. I just, as tragic as it was, and I did have to leave my son behind. That was for me like leaving my heart, back there. But I went to an attorney, of course, and we got, joint custody. So I was able to get him every other weekend. And today, our son is a healthy, well-adjusted, very successful young man with a family and 2 little girls. And his wife thanks me often for raising such a good gentleman, somebody who's really good to her and the kids. But when he was little and we would go to lunch, I would slide him my credit card, and I'd tell him, I'd say, "Now you pay for the meal because the gentleman always pays for a lady's meal." And he would go, "Okay." And he's like 8 or 9 years old, and the waitress would come bring the check, and he'd say, "No, over here, I'm paying for it." And then he'd pull out the credit card, and they'd always look a little confused. And I taught him how to calculate a tip. So when he got in high school, he came home one day and he said, "Oh gosh, Mom, guess what we learned in school today? How to calculate a tip." I said, "Yes, you already knew that." Yes. So my ex-husband didn't like to travel. It's always been a passion of mine. My family always traveled. We traveled a lot. We took lots of vacations, and road trips and fun things like that and overseas and all. So my husband didn't like to travel, so I've been making up for it for the last 20 years. Yes. So it was a climb uphill. It was funny. Here's a funny story from it. Because he had stolen most of my money as well. But I've always been able to earn money good. I don't really worry about money so much. I know that it's an energetic thing, and you can attract it to you, and that's part of claiming your power too. Claim your power, claim your money. But so I went to the mailbox one day and opened my mailbox, and there was a past due notice for a Visa credit card, $20,000. That's how good my credit had been. And he had forged my name on 5 credit cards, ran them all up to the maximum, and then gave them a change of address to where I was living. So I was kind of strapped for cash, and I thought, you know what? I'm selling this engagement ring, right? I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want it as a reminder. So I took it to a little pawn shop or wherever it was, some diamond and gold place. And the guy pulls the thing out, and he looks at it, and he looks at me, and he said, apparently you don't realize this is a cubic zirconium. And I honestly, I just busted out laughing. And I just shook my head and I said, that it's so appropriate that that ring is a fake, because my whole marriage was a fake too. So I said, yep, worthless marriage, worthless ring. It was hilarious. What are you gonna do? It's crazy.
That is an amazing story that you have, Angela. And what I love most, because there's a lot of tragedy in that story, is that you found a way to tell it and still smile and still laugh and draw upon the strengths that you've gained from it and what you took from it so that you can now help others. I mean, you wrote a book. You've done amazing things.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us the message about the book, the name and the message of it, and where people can find it?
Yes, it's actually on Amazon, and I did a search in Barnes and Nobles, and it pops up there also. I don't think it's in the Barnes and Noble stores yet, because it officially doesn't print or launch until October the 15th, I believe. But I don't know if you can see it.
You can't love him into loving you.
And how many of us have tried that? I tried it not with just this guy, but I've tried it with other guys before. My mother didn't help the situation when she was alive, because she was raised in that era. Women are very subservient to men and stuff like that. And she would just tell me, oh, he just needs more love. And I would go, oh, yes, you're right, he does. No, he needed a swift kick in the rear is what he needed. Yeah, so the message is, don't go to your friends. First of all, if you think you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you're going to be whining. And one of my thanks in here is thanks to my family and my friends who listen to me whine and whine and whine, and they're still my friends, because here's a problem. The narcissistic relationship is unlike any other. When I really first started healing was when somebody told me that I had PTSD. And I said, no, I wasn't in the military. I didn't go to war. And they said, no, you have PTSD. And so as I started researching a little bit more, I found out that that was indeed what I had, because it's been 20 years since my divorce. And really, just up until the last 4 or 5 years ago, I hate to say it went that long, but it did. But I didn't know where to turn for help, because here's the story. If you tell even a therapist who's not versed in narcissistic relationships, they won't understand the trauma that you experience with the day-to-day picking away at your self-esteem and doing things to make you think you're crazy, like gaslighting you. He used to gaslight me. I would put the dishes away, clean the kitchen at night, and I'd walk into the kitchen in the morning and every cabinet door would be standing open. And I'm like, what? Why did you open all the cabinet doors? I didn't do that. You did that last night. I did that? Yes, You did that. And he would do that continuously. And they do little things like that to make you question your sanity. There's a movie called Gaslighting. It's an old black and white movie. And the guy, it was from, he would turn, the lady would leave the room, she would turn the gas lamp off. And when she'd walk back into the room, the gas lamps were back on. And her husband, who was a narcissist, who was married her for her inheritance, told her that she did it. So that's where that term came from. But so your friends will tell you, look, you know, for heaven's sakes, it's been 10 years, get over it. You know, it's been 15 years, get over it. And I would say to myself, you know, they're right. I need to get over this. Nothing ever bothers me like this, you know. Why can't I just get over it? There must be something wrong with me. So then you feel worse because you can't just get over it, you know. But once you find help from people who understand the injury, the trauma that you've gone through, and they walk you through different steps and different things that you can do, and you do start getting over it. And I can say now, because he lives about 5 miles from me, and I used to think of him and I would just get nauseated almost. I was so sick every time I would think of him. And last Saturday, my granddaughter turned 6, and we were both at her birthday party, and I was there first. And when he walked into the room, I was kind of wondering how I'd feel. And I saw him, and he glanced at me, and I said, "Hey, how are you?" And he kind of did this little number, and I said, "Yeah, you don't recognize me with my hair all short now, do you?" And he kind of started walking over to me, and I said, "Oh, give me a hug." I said, "It's good to see you," because he is the father of my son. You know, it's just, it doesn't bother me anymore to see him. You know, I don't know why he treated me the way he did, other than the fact that I know he was in love with his best friend's wife. They had all gone to college together, and his best friend, the three of them were all hanging out, and his best friend jumped in because he's not Mr. Cool like my ex-husband's. He's too cool to ask a girl out or, you know, ask her for her phone number. So the other guy started dating her and then asked her to marry him, and they got married. And I don't think that my ex-husband ever got over that. So, you know, I'm thinking, he married me because all of his friends loved me so much and told him not to let me get away. But yet, I think after he married me, he realized that I wasn't able to replace her. I didn't push her out of his mind. And we saw them almost every day. You know, we were all in such a tight circle. So he was constantly reminded of the one that got away. And that's a chapter in my book, the one that got away and the one that didn't. I was the one that didn't get away until finally. Yeah.
I love how you just described, because you do share biological children and grandchildren. I love how this is where I'm talking about, you walk your talk, is taking your power back. And I know from experience, the moment you walked over and asked, you know, give me a hug or can I hug you, is the moment you took your power back. And it's about taking your power back over and over and over, but you're doing it from a place of power versus force, right? The difference of, my heart is open, I'll hug you now, even though there might be a part of us that says, oh, don't go there. But we decide, a conscious choice, to lean in and hug that person, because that's going to heal my heart. The opposite is not going to. The opposite of always looking at everything he did to me, because the reality is you aren't in that situation anymore, and you have your power back. And that powerful woman can now hug the father of her child, you know, the grandfather. And that's where the wisdom is. And that's where all this holding space for others you can do, because you are living that, moving into living that life of passion. That's where passion is, right?
Yes. Exactly. And I felt good when I did it. I didn't have any hesitation. And I have to say that, because we've been divorced for so long, we've run into each other at other birthday parties and things like that. And in the past, I've had to force myself to smile and say, "Hey, how you doing?" But it was a totally different feeling. It was, I was closed off, protecting myself. But now I know that he doesn't have any power over me, that I'm the only one that has the power to control my emotions, and I choose love, I choose forgiveness, and as they always say, forgiveness isn't really for the other person, it's for yourself. And it makes all the difference in the world. And it hasn't been easy, I mean, it's been a long, dark path to get to that. But, for the most part, I put it out of my mind. But when I started writing this book just about a year ago, it took me back through every emotion, back through it. And that's when I was going through the dark night of the soul. I mean, it was very traumatic writing this book, but it was interesting also when I put the period at the last sentence, it was just this giant weight was lifted from me. And so, I know I'll probably get a lot of criticism for the book. Do I want my family to read it? Not necessarily. But if they do, it is what it is. I didn't fabricate any of it, and I actually left some parts out. So, it is what it is. I wrote the book for me. If it helps even one other woman to recognize she's in a similar situation and to free herself from that, then I've accomplished way beyond, what I set out to do. But I do think it does have some really good information in it. And I tried to include resources for people. Some of the counselors and the therapists that helped me, I put those people in here as well. Angie Charlebois helped me tremendously with her havening techniques that she does. I highly endorse her. I went through a box of tissues with our first session, but boy, afterwards it was very enlightening. So you can come back from, I think, anything. And I know that people say, oh, it was, oh, you went through some horrible stuff. It's interesting, maybe because my parents were very physically violent with each other, and because I didn't have any physical violence, I didn't really think at the time that it was that bad. I knew I was unhappy all the time, but I didn't think it was that bad. And so even now when I look back, I don't think it was yes, it was a horrible situation, but you know what I'm saying? I don't think of it at the level as people who have actually undergone, physical violence and things like that. I don't know. I don't know. I used to ride bucking horses as a child in rodeos, and so maybe I'm just like, that's nothing. I can handle it. I don't know.
It's amazing, like the story that we tell ourselves, like you said, since you saw more physical violence, with your parents, that when it came to you and your husband, you kind of judged it against that and thought, well, this isn't as bad. So
Right.
It's amazing. That's just the stories that we create.
It is.
Around these things, and we have the power to change it. So
yes, rewrite your story.
Amazing.
You can rewrite your story,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm definitely have written a lot of good chapters since that divorce.
And it sounds like this book was part of your healing too, that it helped to heal. Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you want to share how you help others?
Yes. After that divorce and realizing that I was so ill-equipped to protect myself, I started doing a lot of research. I've always been a very voracious learner. I just love to read new things, learn new things. And so I looked into the coaching part of it. I've taken a lot of psychology classes and things like that as well, but I wanted to get into coaching because my friends always told me, they said, well, you've been coaching all of us all along anyway, you might as well get a certification in it and do it, professionally. So I looked at so many different people out there, Bob Proctor, a lot of them, but the one that resonated with me the most was Mary Morrissey, and she's the Life Mastery Institute, and it's about a 2.5-year program. But I resonated with her. Our backgrounds are very similar, and she comes from a Christian base also. And so that was important to me as well, because my faith got me through a lot of things in my life. That marriage was one big one. You know, I spent a lot of time praying and asking for help. But so I became certified dream builder coach with Mary Morrissey in 2017. And then, of course, Mike Dooley's Infinite Possibilities. I love that program. I love doing those workshops because you'll see the light come on with certain people. They're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. So what I do is I'll start people off pretty much with the workshop and just see how open they are and how much they're actually interested in it, because that's kind of a low entry point. And then if they want further help, then I take them into a 3 to 6 month coaching program. Usually by the end of 6 months, they're ready to, I'd say, they're ready to fly from the nest. They've grown their little wings and they're ready to fly. So yeah, I just think that, you know, we need, oh, and I also do overcoming fear workshops, because the definition of fear is the boundary of your current reality. So every time you bump up against that boundary of your current reality, you start to feel the fear. So all the good things are on the other side. All the great things are on the other side. I used to always have a fear of heights. So, you know, if you look on my Facebook, oh, it's not up there anymore. One of my Facebook pages, I did a skydiving adventure several years ago. And my friends were like, what do you mean? You're afraid of heights? And I said, face your fears, you know? So I'm not afraid of heights anymore. It was fantastic. It was one of the best things I've ever done. I highly recommend to do a skydive. Now, it was a tandem, you know. So I'd been single so long, I figured, you know, that was just one way to get a man on my back. Anyway, it was a great experience. Yeah, so you have to face your fears, you know. Thank goodness I'm not afraid of spiders, because this house that I just moved into, I killed 2 or 3 every day. I know.
So I love that. I love that you said that, the fear, the boundary of your current reality. And when you're sharing about your family and this book that's coming out, often people don't share this story because of the fear of really losing what they have. You know, it's not always about not getting the 2 fears that drive not getting what I want or losing what I have. And knowing that you went through what you went through, because it can be the light for someone. It might turn a light bulb on for, even if it was just one person. And often when we step back into out of the dark and into reclaiming our own light, we have to face the fears that people might reject us if we start telling the truth, or we start sharing stuff that is maybe our conditioning has always kept us quiet. But you've moved towards that, and you're sharing your story, Angela, which I can relate to. I love that I got to know you on this level, because I can relate to it far more than I care to talk about on this interview. Yeah. But it acts like a guidebook for someone else, and recognizing that your story, what you've lived through and survived, is far more important shared than just kept to yourself.
Yes.
And in particular, that you're standing on the other side saying, we can all rewrite our story. I loved that. We can rewrite our story. And I'm, from where I'm sitting, not knowing all that you just shared, I go, wow, there's so much more to Angela than I knew, because I look at this woman who's writing books and touring the world talking, and that's so much hope for anyone who, particularly in a narcissistic relationship, your self-esteem is swept under the rug. Really, no joke is that you cannot see the light. And even when you see the light, you don't believe it's light. You're just going, no, I must be confused.
There must be a train at the end of the tunnel. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. It must be a train.
Absolutely. You become conditioned to feel that the walls are closing in, and actually that is a train coming and I'm going to be done. Like, your mind checks out on you if you've been in it long enough.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you, on your website, a new day is dawning. I love the hope that you're bringing and shining light for what is too common, or a very common issue. And maybe you will reach women at different stages of this,
Yes.
or men, because this also happens to men as well.
It does. And parents. You know, I had a lady who I was talking to the other day, and she said her mother did this. Her mother was the narcissist in the family, and treated her so poorly. It's terrible. I had no idea that it was so prevalent, because when you're in it, you think it's just you know, and of course I thought that he treated me that way because I was doing something wrong, or, you know, he was unhappy with me. I thought it was an isolated event, but now I'm learning that it's rampant right now. And, you know, with all the sex scandals with the men in power, you know, treating women as sex objects, you know, it's so prolific right now that, you know, we need to really come to grips with it. The Dalai Lama, I saw a quote not too long ago, and he said that the world will be changed by the Western women. Yeah, I found that very profound.
And Angela, you are one of the Western women. I just want to acknowledge you for being that woman.
You're so sweet. Gonna make me cry.
From you are, and just breathe that in and own that. And we salute the Western women, this woman who stands before us on this and shares your struggle and your pain, because there is hope, because you came out on the other side. And that if we're all willing to step in and own our power and recognize that our choices are our choices, and not making a choice is also a choice. But hopefully someone will hear exactly what they need to hear, and your courage to write this book and put it out there, despite the fact that you might be rejected by people that love you.
Oh, I doubt. I'm sure.
Who are just not comfortable with the truth yet. And
right.
There's just been so many great nuggets of wisdom here, and your own evolution and where you stand today, lighting the way for so many others. You are the train that's coming down the track, but it's on a much more bigger mission than to take anyone out.
Maybe as Andy Dooley says, it's the bliss train.
The bliss train.
It's the bliss train. Yeah, we have to recognize and own our power. And I don't know the exact words to that Marianne Williamson quote, but, you know, it's that we're afraid of just how powerful we may be. Sometimes we're afraid to step into our power because we know that it can change everything. And most people are not comfortable with change, you know? So the other thing I just want to mention is, for me, somebody asked me one day, what's the opposite of love? And I said, oh, that's easy. It's fear. It's not hate. Because when you really stop and think about it, fear breeds the hate. fear is the reason for the bullying, for the put downs, for all of the, pretty much everything that's negative, you can attribute it back to fear. I had somebody on a Facebook post or something one day just attack me. Oh no, sorry. I'm going to admit this, it was on a dating site. I had my skydiving picture on there, and some guy just tore into me for being so reckless and for risking my life and endangering, just on and on and on and on and on. Just, I mean, really bad language too. And so, of course, my impulse was to write back and say, what an idiot you are, but I didn't respond for like 2 to 3 days. I kind of mulled it over. And then I realized I typed back this one sentence to him. I said, what are you so afraid of? And I never heard back from him. But obviously, my skydiving picture triggered some deep fear within him, and he felt like he had to strike out at me. And that's a response I use every now and then to people. If I see people getting into an attack mode, I just take a deep breath and say, what are you so afraid of? And you'll see it really flips a switch in them, and it just takes the air out of their sails. I've never had anybody come back at me when I've said that. So that will be my response when I get all the criticism on my book. What are you so afraid of? Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And what if people embrace it? I'm sure there will be a lot of people that will embrace your message in that book and that need to hear your story and what you have to share. So thank you so much, Angela. I know you have a free gift for our audience. Do you want to tell us about that and how also people can find you, reach out to you, learn more?
Yes. So anybody who responds, and you can email me at admin. There's a place on Angela Britton. That's Angela, and then Britton is spelled B as in boy, RITTAINLLC @gmail.com. You can reach out to me there, and if you'll just put in the subject line free gift. And what I'm offering is a free 30-minute strategy session with me to see if I can help you with an issue that you're having at this time. And then after that strategy session, if you choose to go into coaching with me, I'm offering a $100 discount off of the normal price on that also. So, and then I do offer the workshops as well. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is
sorry, and my website, Michelle, I think pointed out a little while ago, my website is angelabrittonllc.com. So that's easy to find. And you can, there's a contact form on there as well, if that's easy to.
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to put the links by the video so people can find you and take advantage of your free gift. Thank you so much. Yes. Any final words that you want to leave our viewers?
Just would like for them to know that if they're in that situation, if they find themselves in a relationship where they're not being lifted up, where they're not happy, where they're unhappy more than they're happy, then seek help. Life is too short. You can overcome your fear, but when you're on your deathbed and you have the regrets, I've always said I'd rather be sorry for something that I did than something that I did not do, because I don't want any regrets in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. No regrets. Awesome. Michelle, any final words from you before we end?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Angela. It's been a pleasure. You've always been such a cheerleader for everyone, and it was just really nice to bring you into this light and hear more about you. And I look forward to all that your book is going to bring as far as light into our world, and it's coming at a much needed time. And I'm celebrating you for the liberating, or all the others that you're liberating by shining your light. And thank you for today.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye for now, everybody. See
Bye.
you next time on Project Positive Change Soul Series. Bye for now.